The diner was alive with chatter and the clinking of silverware against plates. Bright neon lights illuminated the space, casting a warm glow that invited people in from the chilly evening outside. Families sat at booths, sharing laughter over milkshakes and burgers, while friends gathered around tables, engaged in animated conversations. The smell of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sense of crispy bacon and buttery pancakes, creating an atmosphere that felt cozy and welcoming. In one corner, a jukebox played classic tunes, providing a soundtrack to the hustle and bustle of the evening crowd. Waitstaff moved swiftly between tables, balancing trays filled with food and drinks as they made sure every customer was satisfied. Among them was a young black waitress named Maya, known for her bright smile and friendly demeanor. She had been working at the diner for several years and loved chatting with regulars who came to enjoy their favorite meals. As the sun set beyond the diner's windows, shadows danced across the floor, hinting at the night to come. It was an ordinary evening until a group of teenagers entered, laughing loudly and drawing attention as they took a table near the window. One of them stood out, a rich teen dressed in designer clothes, exuding an air of arrogance that set him apart from others. His friends joined in on his antics, their laughter echoing throughout the diner. Maya approached their table with her usual cheerful attitude, ready to take their orders. Little did she know that this encounter would soon take a dark turn that would ripple through the diner and change everything for those present. The stage was set for an unexpected confrontation that would leave everyone shocked and unsettled. As the laughter from the group of teenagers filled the diner, attention shifted toward them. The rich teen, Jake, was the center of the spotlight. With slick back hair and designer sneakers, he embodied confidence, but there was an air of entitlement that surrounded him. Raised in a wealthy family, Jake had always been handed everything he wanted, from luxury cars to exclusive parties. His friends, a mix of equally privileged boys and girls, followed his lead, laughing at his jokes and egging him on as if they were part of a private show. Seated at the table with Jake were his best friends, Max, a tall boy with a quick wit, and Lila, who loved to flaunt her latest fashion finds. They all shared a bond formed over their affluent lifestyles, where money often shielded them from the consequences of their actions. Their boisterous energy stood in stark contrast to Maya's calm demeanor as she approached their table. Maya had worked at the diner for 3 years, balancing her job while attending community college. She was determined to make a better life for herself and her younger siblings. Always friendly and attentive, she prided herself on providing excellent service to every customer who walked through the door. Maya had dreams of becoming a nurse one day, motivated by her desire to help others. Her warm smile often brightened the diner's atmosphere, making regulars feel like family. As Maya reached Jake's table, she felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. Dealing with rowdy customers was part of her job, but something about Jake's smug expression made her uneasy. Little did she know that this encounter would lead to a shocking moment that would change everything for her and those around her. Maya approached the table with a warm smile, ready to take Jake and his friends' orders. As she neared, she could feel the tension in the air. Jake's eyes sparkled with mischief, and he leaned back in his chair like he owned the place. Maya introduced herself and asked what they would like to eat, but before she could finish her sentence, Jake interrupted her with laughter. "Look at this. We have ourselves a little server," he sneered, showing off his arrogance to his friends. They chuckled, encouraging him to continue his show. Maya felt her cheeks flush slightly but remained composed, practicing her customer service skills. Just as she was about to take down their orders, Jake leaned forward and spat directly onto Maya's uniform. The moment hung in the air, frozen in disbelief. A collective gasp echoed throughout the diner as everyone turned their heads toward the shocking scene unfolding. For a brief moment, it felt like time had stopped, even the lively jukebox seemed to quiet down in utter surprise. Maya stood frozen, completely taken aback by his brazen disrespect. The laughter from Jake's friends faded into silence as they realized how serious this moment had become. The diner rejoiced in laughter just moments ago, but suddenly an uncomfortable tension gripped the room. Jake's smug expression revealed both his enjoyment of the act and his complete lack of empathy for Maya. Her heart raced as she fought against the urge to retaliate. But she held her ground, refusing to let his actions define her spirit. Unbeknownst to Jake, 10 Hell's Angels were watching from across the diner. Their attention was now fully captured by the unfolding drama, ready to respond to this blatant act of disrespect. It was clear that this incident was about to take a turn that no one in the diner would forget. The moment Jake's spit landed on Maya's uniform, a heavy silence enveloped the diner. Patrons, who moments before had been engaged in their own conversations, turned wide-eyed toward the commotion. Gasps filled the air as people processed what they had just witnessed. Families with children looked on in shock, unable to comprehend such blatant disrespect. A middle-aged man at the counter set down his cup of coffee, nearly spilling it as he leaned closer to get a better view of the scene unfolding. He muttered under his breath, "Did that kid really just do that?" Several other patrons exchanged concerned glances, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and anger. A young couple sitting at a booth whispered urgently to one another, contemplating how they should react. Maya stood still, processing the humiliation while trying to hold back her emotions. Meanwhile, an elderly woman seated nearby shook her head in disapproval. "What a disgrace," she exclaimed loudly enough for others to hear, drawing nods of agreement from those around her. The diner felt electric with tension, every person present acutely aware that something needed to be done about Jake's revolting act. As murmurs spread through the crowd, some patrons began to rise from their seats instinctively. Others pulled out their phones, perhaps to capture the moment or call for help. The spirited ambience that characterized the diner was now replaced by palpable discontent and outrage over Jake's actions. While Maya remained motionless at Jake's table, feeling both vulnerable and strong in her resolve, the looming presence of the 10 Hell's Angels provided an unexpected sense of safety for many in the diner. Their watchful eyes were ready to intervene if necessary, further heightening the drama unfolding within those walls. The entire diner held its breath as everyone braced for what would happen next. In one corner of the diner, 10 members of the infamous Hell's Angels were seated at a long table, their presence imposing and unmistakable. Clad in leather jackets adorned with patches that signified their loyalty to the gang, they exuded an air of authority that naturally drew attention. The clinking of glasses and the bustling chatter around them faded into a dull murmur as patrons cast glances at the bikers, some with a mix of fear and curiosity. These men were not just figures of intimidation, they were a tight-knit group forged through years of shared experiences. They had seen their fair share of trouble and knew what it meant to stand up for what was right. As Jake's crude act unfolded, the members who were usually reserved remained silent but alert, their eyes fixed on the teenage chaos at the other end of the diner. With tattoos swirling on their arms and faces that told stories of battles fought both on the road and in life, these bikers watched intently. Their expressions revealed little, stoic and focused, but beneath that collective calm was a storm brewing, ready to unleash if provoked. Each man exchanged slight glances, communicating silently about their growing frustration toward Jake's blatant disrespect. As Maya stood there in shock, having just been spit on by Jake, one Hell's Angel leaned slightly forward, resting his muscular arms on the table. His intense gaze locked onto the scene with unyielding resolve. It was clear that they would not let such behavior slide without consequences. Other diners felt a wave of relief knowing that these men were there. The bikers had established themselves as defenders of honor in a place where respect was paramount. The atmosphere shifted again as the tension built, everyone could sense that an intervention was inevitable, and soon they would witness just how powerful these unexpected guardians could be. The diner held its breath, eagerly anticipating what would happen next as the situation approached its breaking point. The tension in the diner reached a boiling point as the Hell's Angels exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from stoic observation to a shared understanding of what needed to happen next. The atmosphere grew thick with anticipation, patrons leaned in, eager to see how the bikers would respond to Jake's outrageous behavior. With an almost synchronized movement, 2 of the Hell's Angels stood up from their table, towering over the other diners. Their leather jackets creaked softly as they moved, and the sight of them sent a ripple of both fear and admiration through the crowd. The noise level dropped even further, and all eyes focused on the approaching bikers. Jake, still smirking with arrogance, was completely unaware of the storm brewing behind him. As one of the Hell's Angels approached, a large man with a heavily tattooed arm and a buzz cut, he locked eyes with Jake. "You think that's funny?" his deep voice rumbled, cutting through the silence like thunder. The playful bravado that Jake had shown seconds before began to fade as he realized he was facing someone who would not tolerate his disrespect. The second biker, equally imposing, positioned himself beside his friend, creating an unyielding wall of muscle and authority. "You don't treat people like that," he added, his tone firm but calm. The sudden shift in power dynamics left Jake looking small and outmatched. Max and Lila exchanged nervous glances, realizing their friend had crossed a line far beyond mere teasing. The tension was palpable as patrons held their breath, fearing what might happen next yet feeling a sense of relief knowing that someone was standing up for Maya. Maya stood frozen at her table, a mix of emotions swirling within her, humiliated yet hopeful. The presence of the Hell's Angels had transformed the diner into a battleground for respect. It was clear that this confrontation was just beginning and that Jake's actions would not go unpunished. Jake's smirk faded as the two Hell's Angels approached him, their presence looming larger with each step. The diner was silent, the air thick with tension as everyone watched, anticipating the confrontation that was about to unfold. The first biker, his tattoos telling stories of grit and resilience, leaned forward slightly, his eyes narrowing. "You think spitting on someone is funny?" he growled, his voice low but powerful. Jake opened his mouth to respond, trying to muster a comeback, but the words caught in his throat as he registered the intensity of the biker's glare. The second Hell's Angel stepped in closer, towering over Jake and blocking any chance of escape. "You don't treat people like that," he said firmly, his tone unwavering but calm. "She's just trying to do her job." Max and Lila shifted uneasily in their seats, their laughter from earlier replaced by anxiety. They exchanged worried glances, realizing that their friend had gone too far this time. The surrounding diners leaned in closer, captivated by the unfolding drama, whispering among themselves about what would happen next. Maya stood at her station, a mix of fear and hope swelling inside her. She felt empowered knowing that someone was standing up for her. As Jake's bravado crumbled under the weight of the biker's presence, it became clear that this was no longer just a simple act of disrespect, it had escalated into something much more significant. "Do you want to apologize?" the first biker demanded, crossing his arms and awaiting Jake's response. The room held its breath as Jake hesitated, glancing nervously at his friends for support. But instead of finding reassurance, he saw their fear mirrored back at him. The realization hit hard, he was now isolated and outmatched. As Jake struggled for words, it became evident to everyone present that this moment would mark a turning point, not just for him but for Maya as well. The Hell's Angels had made it clear, respect was not optional in this diner, and there would be consequences for those who tried to undermine it. As the confrontation unfolded, a palpable shift occurred in the diner. The initial shock of Jake's action had transformed into a potent mix of fear and anxiety among the patrons. Many sat with their eyes glued to the scene, hearts racing as they anticipated how the Hell's Angels would respond. The mood, previously filled with casual chatter and laughter, crackled with an electric tension that gripped everyone present. Families huddled closer together, whispering softly to one another about what might happen next. Some diners clenched their fists or crossed their arms tightly, feeling a sense of vulnerability in the heated moment. Yet, amid the apprehension hung a glimmer of relief, many felt grateful knowing that the bikers were there to intervene against Jake's brazen disrespect. It was as if a guardian force had entered their midst, promising protection for those who couldn't stand up for themselves. Maya watched wide-eyed, her heart racing as she took in both the Hell's Angels' imposing figures and Jake's growing discomfort. Her feelings oscillated between fear for what might unfold and empowerment by seeing these fierce defenders in action. For once, she felt backed by strength rather than isolation. The collective gasps and murmurs crescendoed when Jake hesitated for too long without an apology. Patrons began shifting in their seats as they exchanged tense glances, sensing that any escalation would pull them into the conflict. A few leaned forward eagerly, drawn to the unfolding drama as if they were witnessing a pivotal moment in a movie. In this charged atmosphere, it was clear that Jake was not only facing two bikers but also going head-to-head with every person in that diner who believed in dignity and respect. The air buzzed with an undercurrent of anticipation. They all waited breathlessly to see if he would finally realize the gravity of his actions before things escalated further. The shift from fear to cautious hope filled the diner, transforming it into an unexpected arena for justice. As Jake stood there, his bravado crumbling under the weight of the Hells Angels' presence, he finally managed to stutter out an apology. "I'm, sorry," he muttered, his voice barely audible. The first biker raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by the lack of sincerity in Jake's words. "That's not good enough," he replied, crossing his arms and leaning closer. Around the diner, the atmosphere shifted once more as murmurs rippled through the crowd. Many patrons felt a sense of validation at watching someone with such privilege face consequences for his actions. The Hells Angels were not just protecting Maya, they were sending a message that disrespect would not be tolerated, regardless of one's social standing. "Apologize properly," the second biker urged firmly. "Look her in the eye and say it like you mean it." This time, Jake hesitated longer, fully aware that this was a moment where his character would be tested. He glanced at Maya, who stood with her head held high despite still feeling shaken. Gathering what little courage he had left, Jake finally looked her way. "I'm really sorry for what I did," he said louder this time, meeting her gaze. "It was disrespectful and wrong." The sincerity in his voice was evident. The moment had opened a door for him to reflect on his behavior and its impact on others. Maya nodded slightly, surprised yet relieved that he seemed to be recognizing the gravity of his actions. Meanwhile, the diners listened intently, understanding that accountability does not always come easy but is essential for growth. The Hells Angels stepped back slightly but remained vigilant, ensuring that Jake understood this lesson would carry weight beyond that night. With newfound respect echoing in their surroundings and a lesson learned about dignity and consideration for others, the diner began to relax. The tension eased as families resumed their conversations, albeit with occasional glances toward Jake, who now bore a sense of humility, as if they were witnessing both an act of redemption and a reminder of what it means to treat everyone with respect. As the evening drew to a close, a sense of calm returned to the diner. The chaos that had momentarily disrupted the warm atmosphere was replaced by a feeling of unity and understanding among the patrons. Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her, knowing that she had not only stood her ground but also gained support from unexpected allies. The Hells Angels had sent a clear message: everyone deserves respect, regardless of their background or profession. Jake sat back down at his table, the weight of his actions heavy on his shoulders. His friends, Max and Lila, no longer laughed or joked. Instead, they shared worried glances, realizing that Jake's behavior had consequences that extended beyond mere teenage arrogance. The diners around them whispered about the importance of kindness and accountability, sharing nods of agreement as they reflected on what they had witnessed. For many in the diner, this incident became a lesson in standing up for others. They realized that sometimes, it takes courage to confront disrespectful behavior, and that support can come from the most unexpected places. Families who had previously been enjoying their meals now engaged in deeper conversations about empathy and fairness, recognizing that moments like these could serve as turning points for change. Maya caught sight of some customers approaching her to express their support, offering warm smiles and encouraging words. It filled her with gratitude to know she was not alone in facing such challenges. The incident had sparked not only a conversation about respect but also a renewed commitment among diners to treat one another with dignity. As the last customers paid their bills and left the diner, there was a shared sense of hope lingering in the air. The events of that night would not be forgotten. They would serve as reminders of the power of kindness and the importance of standing up against wrongdoing. For everyone present, it was clear that this experience had transformed them, igniting a collective promise to foster an environment where respect reigns supreme.